So I'm gonna show you guys a few different ways of doing a patch, depending on what you guys have in the field at your disposal. Okay, so might as well have a little bit more fun with this now. My name is Chris Harper with Destin Dreamers, and we are sponsoring this drywall seminar. And Red Bull sponsors our company. If you would like to learn more about our company and how to sponsor us, click the link below. There we go. You have three different ways of doing this. So, okay, so the most common, what we're going to have in the field is going to be these little patches here. So I'll show you this first, because this is like what I want you to use, because these are just really convenient and easy. Okay, so let's open one of these puppies up. Okay, so you're going to notice that it has a paper backing to it. So this allows it to stick. Okay, so unlike a lot of the drywall tape, where you have to put the mud down first, you don't need to do that first with this. But keep this on, because there's a little trick I'm going to show you. So this is mine. I'm going to do mine. I'm going to have you guys practice yours, and I'll walk you guys through how to get it done afterwards. And we'll just do one at a time. Okay, so I'm not going to jump to the next one and the next one and the next one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this over that hole. I'm going to take my blade, and I'm just going to lightly score just through that outer layer around this outside area of the tape. Does not matter if you go too far outside of that. It does matter if you go too far inside. It has to be able to fit within this. Okay, so just like that. So I prefer a 5-in-1 tool. I don't see one here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to then just take this and I'm going to scrape out the edges. If I can get the whole thing, great. And what I mean by the whole thing is once you get to the paper, you can try to peel the whole thing back. It's not like the biggest deal in the world if you can't get to it though. You're just going to try to scrape that whole edge. You'll see what I mean in a little bit. Okay, oh my gosh, I screwed everything up. It looks horrible. It's so much worse than before. No, it's not. Take the paper off. Overlap that, exactly where you just put that, right over the hole. Oh, it's automatically getting better. So then, what you're gonna do, you're gonna take your drywall mud with your 6-inch. This is why we prep this ahead of time. Then I'm going to take what you need, right? So that's good right there. Now I'm going to trowel that inside of here. I'm going to smooth it out to make sure there's no imperfections or bubbles in it. So I just want to do this over and over until I start seeing those bubbles and any debris in there is gone. That makes all the difference in the world, because it's going to be the difference between this being perfect on the first go round or you having to do multiple coats. Okay, so I get that the way I want. And then with drywall, you're gonna make a mess. Beautiful thing is this is water-based. Yep. It cleans up on anything, even furniture, it cleans up on it. So I'm gonna take the trowel, I'm gonna scoop exactly what I need right here, and I'm gonna go from the center out across the whole thing. Why do I do that? Because I don't want to pull it away from the actual drywall. I just want to get an even surface. That's good enough. Okay, so again, we're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to get the mud on there. Second, oh, and then this is important too, always replace the lid. Always replace the lid. That dries out so fast, it'll blow your mind. So now typically, you're gonna just leave that as is. Now, I would never leave it like this because there's too much material, right? every time you get to the sanding phase, you want to remove as little material as possible. So it's important that we get this as good as we can. Now I've got the main layer on. So now what I want to do is I want to get this evened out here as well so that it hits most of my blade, right? Or at least as much of the surface area as I want. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up here at the top. Again, I'm going from the corner. You never go from the middle because there's more surface area to grab the tape and rip it, right? So I'm always going to start in the corners. And now what I want to do is I want heavy pressure on the end, light pressure in the middle, heavy pressure on the end. So, and I'm just going to do this a couple times, and then I'm good. So that, even if there's slight imperfections, whoop-de-doo, that's first layer, right? So that's good enough. Now, if you notice, I've fanned it tight around the edges, so light sanding the next go around on the outside edge, and I'm not gonna have to do much of anything on the next go around. Now, if we did a second layer, what we're gonna do, this is gonna look almost exactly like what you want when it's already sanded, right? Because this is like, there's nothing here. There's like no line there. So assuming that this is already dry, I'm gonna go back over with another layer, same exact thing. And this time I wanna try to get it as smooth as I can get it to eliminate any second coat that I might have to put on it. And if you notice, I mean, just keep going at it until you get it exactly the way you want it. And mud is your friend, so if you have to put more down, right? But so your second layer should be very minimal sanding. And then if we have to have a second layer, a lot of times I don't do a second layer because I'll get it the first time just like this. I won't need a second layer on that. So yes, sir.
So you mentioned having equal, or the pressure on the outside, not on the center. How do you do that with the handle being in the center?
Yeah, okay, so good question. So what you guys are gonna practice is, so these little holes right here, or even right in the middle, I want no mud, a little mud, no mud. So you're gonna practice this, because you're gonna practice your pressure. And that's how you do that, is you want, and the reason why we do that is if I put the same amount of pressure in the center as I did on the edges, you would peel the tape right off. And that's the number one reason why homeowners screw this up, or even professionals. They screw it up because their pressure is off in the center. And that's why, like you notice, it's a little hole, but I've displaced it so wide. And the reason why is the further you displace it, the harder it is your eyes to pinpoint what was fixed.
Right.
Because, I mean, if I kept going, the wall would be perfect and no one would ever know that there was anything done, right? So that's the reason we do this. As a rule of thumb, all mud that's left in your pan goes in the trash. Just as simple as that. We're going to keep using these, but never put the mud back in that bucket, because everything that is in here, there's going to be debris. A lot of this has already touched the drywall, so it is imperfect. And the only way to maintain perfection is you maintain perfect mud to begin with. So, all right, so that's the first round. That's the most common way I want you guys fixing these. I'm going to show you ways you can do it without those patches, and we'll get to that next. So I'll let you guys go ahead and try to do it. So if it's an indention, a lot of times especially if it's a deep indention, do not try to sand that all the way smooth. Sometimes you'll sand all the way to the tape layer trying to get that done. Yeah. when you put your next coat of mud on, it's going to eliminate the indentions. So do not worry about the indentions. The biggest point of this sanding process is to get the outside edges to disappear. The inside, you only want to sand the top surface smooth. You do not worry about any indentions. Obviously, if it's ridges and raises, you've got to take those down to meet the rest of the majority of the surface area. So whatever the majority of the surface level is, get everything to that level. If only a small fraction of that is below that, don't worry about it, right? So you guys understand that? So that's that. I'll let you try that now. So that's sanding.
Is it better to use this the finer grit too?
Yes, always
200,
always use the finer stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And then like in between transitions here, like, well, gosh, we don't have enough mud. We'll just keep it the way it is. But you always clean your blades when you're done. Always clean your blades when you're done.
And dry them off.
And like, so even like right now, what I would do is I would take these blades and scrape the mud, clean the blades before we get to the next one. So go ahead and get those, wash them off and clean them up.
Now in a house, would you recommend go outside or just do it in a kitchen sink or something?
I mean, you can do it in a kitchen sink just fine.
Yeah.
Because it's all water soluble, so it doesn't really make any difference. But I mean, obviously, it's better for not getting splashed. You know, I mean, if it's a clean house, do it outside.
Yeah.
There's just no reason to try to clean something else. So, but yeah, I mean, in the field, I would always take my mud and I always throw it out. I never just, you know, just get rid of it. And my pan, everything needs to be perfect for my next round.
Owner may not like that you did that.
Yeah. Okay, so you got a wood repair.
This is different.
Pretty simple. Sand around this. Make sure there's nothing raised. Right there. You can take spackle, which is fine. Of course, this looks like it came out of Ghostbusters.
Yeah, it does.
This is really nasty stuff.
Terrible.
Teletubbies. So I don't have a trowel with me right now, so I'm just going to use this. So, and I can trowel that on, just like I'm going to do with drywall. And everything else can be cleaned up, and then that can be sanded and refinished and repainted. So you can use this for wood, but
Wood only.
not drywall. It does not work with drywall. It never does.
CC.
What's that called there?
Spackle.
Yeah.
But the pink stuff I hate because it's a horrible product. They put chemicals in it to dry, so basically when it's not pink, it's dry and all that, and the chemicals affect, in my opinion, it affects its ability to bond. It just doesn't hold over time. But with wood, it seems to be fine because it's got enough that it can like grip inside. So that's my experience with that stuff. I prefer it not to be even on the vans. You can use sheetrock mud for that as well. Or there's a bunch of other wood putty that works
We
too.
have some putty in there.
So the wood putty, now the hard stuff is made for filling holes. There's actually like a soft, I'm trying to think of who makes it, but it's real fluffy. Like it's a real fluffy type of wood filler.
Yeah.
And it goes on real smooth. And that's really good for wood. Way better than that spackle.
Almost.
So,
No.
well, it's getting worse, Dave.
I'm just
I look back and it's way worse than it was before. Okay, let me show you a little trick.
End is bugging me.
Okay, so this is why everything is just getting to hell. So way too much mud on this blade. So you don't want the mud on the blade. Not like that, right? So I want to clean that blade. The least amount of imperfections on the blade. See, look at that. A smooth wall, and look at where the mud goes. So you'll never get smooth here if the blade's not smooth, right? So I need to get all of that off. And this is a crappy trowel, but still I want that edge to be as clean as I can get it. And then, you got enough mud on the walls. And then I want to just go over that with my new clean blade. And see, that right there is because you didn't have a good bond
Yeah.
underneath of it. So what we're gonna do in this case is I'm gonna get enough mud to just conceal that. And honestly, something like that might be the best you're gonna get right now. And the reason why is because that's just bubbling out.
Yeah.
A lot of times what you can do with these patches, like I didn't need it on mine, but a lot of times what you can do is you can just simply just put mud over the hole first and then put that in there. And then you can start troweling it just to get an extra bond because you didn't get the bond there. But again, like these ridges here sands real easily. I just want to make sure that my outside edges are nice and smooth. So I'm just too much of a perfectionist. And yeah, that didn't bond, or you know what it is actually. So when you troweled that, you raised that edge up. And so that's why it's not adhering, is because again, when you initially put that first one down, when you're using the 6-inch, it's not about smoothing it out. You'll screw it up more than anything. And the reason why that's doing that is, do we have an extra one that I can show you? I can give you an example of why that's doing that. Okay, well, quite simply, here's the thing. So when you're pushing this, trying to smooth it initially, you're bowing the middle. And when you're bowing the middle, because remember, the middle doesn't have anything behind it, right? When you bow the middle, because you're putting too much pressure on, it's raising the edges. That's why it's super important on that first go round, you're gonna start in the middle, and you're gonna very lightly, because that's the weakest point. And I wanna get it smoothed out downward to the edges so that I have that bond. That's the only important part about this. I don't care about anything else. I think I made my point.
Okay.
And so once you get that, you can put that aside. You can get plenty of mud. I want to make sure my blade's nice and clean. You can get plenty of mud on here, and then I'm going to start for the corners, and then I'm going to go across it. And then I got to do the exact same thing coming back the other direction. And then I can start smoothing that out. And again, I always want to go to the corners so that I don't displace the tape. But see, that one's already so raised, there's not much. I'm just going to leave that alone because it's not going to get better. But you see my point, is recognize there's a hole, there's a void behind it. So it's not going to be able to take that kind of pressure with your mud. That's why we also release the pressure when we get over the middle. So, but that'll be just fine, because once you get that dry, we can go over another layer and then we can sand it and it'll disappear. But that's why it's so critical for your preparation, the first little section, that you make sure that it's perfect. Because how it lays onto the wall will be the difference of a 3-minute thing or like this one where you got to go back over it with another layer and sand it twice. I may have to hit this one more time because it's starting to shrink, but that's it. I may have to hit that one more time, you know, and light sanding, pretty easy to repair. So, all right, let's go on to the next one. So rarely will I ever have you guys do this, but it's nice to know how to do it in the event you might need it. Okay, so this one's mine. Okay, so let's say that there's a drywall repair. It's got to be fixed. You don't have drywall tape, and you do not have any of these repair kits, but you have sheetrock, right? And this would be, in real life, that would be the last thing you'd probably have in the van, is sheetrock. But in that case, this is all you've got, or you've got a sheet there. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut a piece of sheetrock about the thickness of tape all the way around this hole right here. Now, I can't cut that wild of a shape, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to square this up. Or rectangle it. And then, so little trick on this, you just flip this around, and I'm going to simply draw out my marks of where this is going to be. Now, if I've got a speed square, I can make this a little bit easier, but I'm going to just do a little trick here. So, okay, so now what I want to do is I want to take my knife, and again, on the other side, I want to score this all the way around. So I've got this, and I can clean this up if I want, you know, to make this a little easier, since I just kind of butchered it. Of course, my blade's completely dead. Anyway, okay, so now I'm gonna fit it into the hole. Look at that, it's perfect. I'm gonna take my mud. Actually, I gotta get this thing back. Oh, I made it too perfect. Oh no. There we go, okay. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna just get this, because the tape has to adhere to something. So I want this to be just all the way around this, pretty even coat. And of course I flipped it upside down. Need more mud. Obviously fan this as well. Everything's the exact same as what we went over last time. And I'm gonna treat this exactly like I've done before. I'm just skipping that initial step because I don't need to do that. That's good enough. So that's if I have nothing but sheetrock. I can make the exact same repair. I don't need any backing for it. So I didn't need to put wood in there or anything like that. Yesterday, we didn't have any drywall. So all we had was the initial cutout, which I should probably show how to do that as well, right? But so that's how, I'm not gonna have you guys do this. I mean, I don't think, unless you want. It's like very rare you're gonna need this, especially when you can go pick these patches up at the store for home use or whatever. But that's a last minute technique. I don't want to go to the store to get anything. I've got sheetrock here and I just need to make the patch. So that's how we make that patch. Okay? Do you guys want to try to do this, or? No. I don't care either way. Because I don't think you're going to need to use this. But I wanted you to see it. And again, it's just cutting a piece large enough to cover that. You're going to measure that inside of that piece. And then you're going to flip that piece over and make your cuts. And then you've got the flange or that extra paper around it to adhere to the wall. Now, the paper on the sheetrock is so thin, I don't have to cut anything out because it's so thin, right? Whereas with these patches, I had to actually cut that layer out to make it level. With this, I don't have to do any of that. So it does make it quick sometimes. I mean, I skipped 2 whole steps doing that. So, but at the same time, you don't always have sheetrock with you.
Right.
So that's why it's probably not going to be something we're going to use. Okay, so moving on, if you guys are good with that.
Now, and sometimes toilet paper holders, those kind of the towel bars, those
Yeah.
get pulled out and create a hole. Are these taxes adequate enough to be able to put, you know?
You're
put
never
something
gonna
back?
put the towel bar back over the hole.
Okay.
You're never gonna put it in the back in the same spot. So in that situation, what you should do is, let's say that's the towel rack. I would completely relocate the towel rack.
Yeah.
Take the towel, take it off, patch the hole, find the closest stud, make sure one side is anchored, probably the weaker side, which is where the hole is. Find that stud, anchor that one, and then that one goes into the drywall on the other side.
All right.
What is that? Michelle's over like, no, it wasn't me.
Totally me.
You're gonna be standing quite a while, Michelle. So yeah, so that's two different techniques. And again, I mean, everything, it's just your first layer, don't be hypercritical. Just try to think in the back of your mind, how can I eliminate that much sanding on the next go round? Because you're trying to make it as clean as possible, but you don't need to be hypercritical. Like, I mean, some of this stuff, like, oh, well, it's not perfect. It can be sanded. It's really not a big deal. I mean, in a first coat, like, I'm not going to even lie. My sheetrockers in a first coat would literally just sit there and go and walk away, and that's it. That's perfect, because they're gonna come back on the second day. They're gonna get their big sand block, and they're gonna go, and then they're gonna quickly just come back over it on that next round and just blah 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 blah, and just do. I mean, it's really fast. It's really fast, right? So that first coat, the point is the professionals will never make that first coat perfect. Like, if I'm in a hurry, I will try to get mine as perfect as I can, because we're limited on time, right? So that's why I try to get these as perfect as I can, because of that limitation. But in the real world, that first coat is get it on the wall. I can sand it, I can do all that. I just don't want big pockets where it's just indented. And this was a horrible example. It's just a horrible. But yeah, my point is just the speed that usually it takes. So anyway, okay, so to address the smaller items, right? So like we covered up most of our small items. All right, so let me get one that's, would you say that's like pretty good?
Yeah.
Okay. So in this situation, you can use your hand just to get any paper, anything that's going to be sticking out from the wall, okay? So get that like that. You're going to take your 6-inch, put that thing away, or 4-inch would work really well in this situation too. Do we have a clean one? Can we clean that one? Okay, so I'm going to take my mud. I want to isolate where I have it in here, okay? So you don't want it all over the entire blade, right? So I just want to put it in one little spot. So I'm just going to put it in one little spot right here, and I'm just going to quickly get a little bit of mud right over that hole. Now, you would think, oh, well, that's probably good. I can probably just sand that, and it's probably going to be good. No, it won't. It won't. It'll shrink, and you'll have a pocket there, and it won't sand out. So tape is our friend, right? This is similar paper product that they put on the backing here, so it bonds equally the same way. So a clean blade is also your knife, but it doesn't damage the wall. Okay, so I can use this. I can put that, just where it just overlaps that a little bit. Put pressure on that, I can tear that. So now I have that piece. I'm going to set that over top of there. I'm going to take my mud again, very lightly. I'm going to go on the center, and I'm going to go away from it. And try not to disturb that tape, because the tape is going to be very easy to displace. And so this is all about pressure.
Or lack of pressure.
Yes. So, and that's it. That's just, we're done. So now when we come back over it, light sand, immediate texture. Doesn't need anything more than that. And you're good. So all small marks can be done just like that. Now, let's go over the nail holes, because nail holes, do we have a screw and the drill?
Drywall screw.
Okay, do we have a drill, I mean? Okay, so I am going to, let's see, I'm going to fake. Okay, so. There's a hole. All right, dance break. Would that make sense though, Bruce?
Yeah.
So you guys will practice that one as well. I'll let you guys practice that.
So
Or maybe we should just do that right now.
You always put a little tape over a hole.
Yes. Anything that's bigger than a nail hole gets a tape.
Yeah, that's where I've always messed up at.
Yeah, because it's
Trying to
always
get
going
it
to shrink.
perfect,
It's
yeah.
always going to bubble. You'll never get that. Because drywall mud, as an example, drywall mud cannot cure well if it's anything over 1/4 of an inch.
Gotcha.
So if you can just remember 1/4 of an inch, that's, so I'll show you. I don't, if you learn to tape one, this is really simple. But okay, so this is a nail hole. You're gonna use one of your tools to get that, you're gonna get that paint out, right? So get that, clean that little area up. Now, on top and bottom, now, so nails are not, like nails can be bent. They could be in just a part of the wood, and that's why they move back and forth. So I want to locate that stud, and just above it, and just below it, I want to go ahead and sink another screw. And then the way you're going to want to recess the screws just so much that mud can go over top of it and it's not bulging out. So then once you get that, where did my, so once you get that, then where are we? Okay, so right here, it's just real simple. Just hit that. And then you're good. And that can be sanded. Now, you want to see there's a little bulge. Okay? You don't want that perfect because the bulge needs to be sanded smooth. You'll never get that smooth initially. So for example, if I keep hitting it and it gets smoother and smoother and smoother, like right here, perfect. But come and look at this, because I want you guys to see this. If you leave it at that, you'll be remudding it the next day.
Shrinks.
Because it shrinks. All the mud shrinks. So you want to have a bulge. See how it's just lightly raised?
Yeah.
Perfect. It will shrink to the level of everything else, and now you just need a light sanding on it, and it's done. Okay, does that make sense?
When should you use tape and when should you just do that?
Anything over 1/4 of an inch.
Okay.
That's kind of the rule of thumb, and this is like, that's, you know, that technically that's like 5/16, right? But rule of thumb though is if it's bigger than your fingernail, I mean that's another way of looking at it, then the sheetrock will not be able, the drywall mud will not be able to cure. It'll crack, or it just won't sand properly, and you'll notice it. I mean, you'll just notice it, right? So anything bigger than that, and really, when in doubt, use the tape. You know, so.
And you put those screws in just to show us how to cover a screw hole.
No. So the reason why I put the screws in is to reinforce the sheetrock to the stud again, because clearly the nail's not holding, which is why the nail popped to begin with. It's, again, they can have a nail and it's not all the way in the stud. It's like barely clipping the stud and the stud is chipped. And so the nail is just moving back and forth. And if somebody bumps into the wall, then it pops the nail hole. So I need to re-secure that sheetrock, that sheetrock area to the stud so that it can't go anywhere, right? And then it'll never happen again, especially 2 screws. It's not, that will never be an issue down the road. So that's how we fix the dry. Now, if it's in the ceiling, nobody's bumping into it. Just scrape it, fill it, repaint it. You don't need to put the screws in, not in the ceiling. It's just walls that can be bumped and stuff. It'll continue to pop. You'll never fix it. It'll always be ongoing. Questions?
Can I see that, please?
Yeah. Okay, so you guys are going to do all this. Okay, so I will give you guys holes big enough that needs to be taped. Actually, why am I helping you? I'm going to leave it dirty.
All right.
that one's good there. I'll make that a little bit there. That you can displace and fan this, the more it's going to be concealed. Okay, so I want to go ahead and do this, and it's always at a complete 90-degree angle. It's never at an angle, right? At any other angle besides 90. So, for example, I don't want to turn this as I'm making circular motions like that, right? It's this. It's exactly the same distance away, and it's light motions back and forth. Okay, so I'll show you. And it's just that simple. And then you're done. If you have any globs, big old freaking glob, right? Scrape that. Well, probably you're going to scrape the whole thing, to be honest with you. So just scrape it, start over. Just that simple. So I can start over and right. Case in point. Larger globs, if it's just a single thing, you can literally touch it and pop it. And then you'll displace it and it'll dry perfectly. But see this, this sucks because look how thick that is right there. Not happy with it. Here, I'll do it. And it's just real light. Just that simple. Don't do it any more than that. And it will dry and it will completely disappear. You have to keep in mind, you're gonna see the wet area way more. And so it's gonna look like it's thicker, but as long as you kept a consistent motion, it dries consistently. It's easy, like if you did a whole sheetrock wall and you've got all your mud where your seam is, you're gonna notice where you textured over that seam far less than you're going to notice in the middle of the sheetrock. But you just have to know that I held it consistently and it dries consistently. And if I'm using a hopper. But in this case, I'm literally just going to go with that motion and I'm going to let that just dry. When that's painted, it's gone. Just completely gone. And the farther you get back, the more area you can displace. You know, but you also have to be mindful that the further you get back, the more it can clump. So it's just, you figure out what works for you. You never want to get too close because it creates a big glob. So you always want to maintain your distance and then just light circular pattern. So pretty much just go to town. One at a time. You guys can get used to just spraying it in a consistent motion where you've got that pattern consistent.
Where you're between the toilet and literally the toilet and the wall.
Am I on the
Clean
toilet?
the sink out.
No.
Okay.
But the hole is there, and it's a tight space. Obviously, you're challenged to get too far out. But you were telling me that overspray is okay. You can always just wipe it up.
Well, yeah, and yeah. So in a texture situation, okay. So let's say right down here is my problem, right? And I've got all this baseboard and everything like that. Honestly, I've been there where you tape everything off, you mask it all off. It doesn't matter. This stuff gets everywhere irregardless, but it cleans up easy. So I don't give a crap about the baseboard. I can clean that up afterwards.
Right.
So I'm gonna hit that texture spot and I'm gonna wipe that overspray off afterwards. So I got that and I'm just gonna go bam.
Yeah.
And I didn't waste any time taping anything, waste of time. You know, it's easy to clean. And now I've got my spot in those weird, difficult positions. Like we were saying, toilets and things like that, what are you gonna take that thing off? No, just clean it up afterwards.
Yep.
Get your texture done and then just clean it up afterwards. It's just simple as that. Okay. So that's pretty much it. Is there anything that you guys see in the field that you want me to show you how to do? Anything else that you can think of?
Yeah. Well, we haven't had any, well, we have had some larger
Okay, yeah.
repairs that you've done.
Let's go over that. That's a good point. Okay, to save time, I'm not going to cut another piece, but if you need to cut another piece, measure it out, or you can take a piece, you can cut it close to the size, you can put it up next to it, mark it, and trim it to get it the exact same size,
Okay,
right?
sort of like you did with the other one.
Yes, that's right. So I don't have any wood, so I'm going to just kind of jerry rig this.
There's some wood right there if you want. We can cut.
No, this is just for you guys. I prefer wood because obviously it's going to be way stronger than what I'm going to do. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create So wood would obviously be the more ideal way of doing this, but I'm going to do it this way just to show you the point.
The problem is it's still showing the 25.
It's fine.
But I thought it would port to 26, whatever. If you add on.
You should.
27. That was the. Maybe I just missed it. I can't screen.
No.
What do you think?
Yeah, as long as you're not adjusting existing houses.
Okay.
No, you're not gonna. Well, you shouldn't.
So I'm going to use these as blocks, as backing. Now again, I would rather use wood because see these aren't going to receive all the way down, so they don't catch. Wood will allow you to actually countersink your screws. Drywall is not going to allow me, but just to save time, I'm going to do it this way, just to show you the concept.
So this is an option instead of feathering. Is that right?
Instead of what?
I call it feathering, but instead of using the paper on the outside, this is.
You couldn't use the paper on this. It's too big.
I see.
If somebody bumped into it, it would literally just push right in.
I see.
And again, wood will support this unbelievably strong. And really, in a situation like this, most of the time, I would just take one side. I would cut it further to get to the stud. If it's that big, so I have a stud on one side, and I only have one piece of wood that I cut on the other side, right? But in this type of situation, just for training purposes, I'm going to show you this. So I'm going to go just about a couple inches over on all sides. So these screws are not recessed, which, again, that's the point of having the wood. But, so this will not be perfect, but you'll get the concept. So I'm gonna start in the middle, I'm gonna work my way out. Never start on the edges, because you're just gonna pull the tape. And then I've gotta get that middle section. And then same thing with what we were doing earlier. Just go corner to corner. And that's good enough. So that's how we do the large patches. But it would be far cleaner if I was able to recess the screws, but even still.
And ideally it would be this drywall, not obviously what you just put back in.
Well, not necessarily. So like the hole that we had to cut in the ceiling for that one repair that we did with the plumbing leak.
Mm-hmm.
So I cut that hole, but I used the same piece to go right back up. But we had to expose whatever was leaking. The sheetrock wasn't compromised.
That was just to get behind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're going to cut a hole, you've got the exact cut.
Just like that.
Yeah. So if you're going to cut a hole, you have the exact cut. You fix whatever's, whatever the problem is, up if it's plumbing or electrical, whatever it is, you fix it and you put it right back. But you have to put backing. If it's molded, then you just cut a new piece.
Okay.
And that's where you're going to get a new piece and set it in there and go and do that. But that's the process. That's how we do it. If it's a full repair, it's the same techniques. The only addition is backing. The larger the piece, you have to have plenty of support for it.
Yeah.
And like what we saw at the repair we had to make at the other house, I had a stud right in the middle of the hole. But I couldn't, that was not nearly enough support. I had to have supports on either side because the middle,
Yeah.
it's just, it's just a teeter-totter, right?
Right.
So we had to put supports on either side. And then we were able from there to be able to float it. And it was, it's just
And
ready
you
to
were
be.
working with 3/4 inch, but we only had 1/2 inch.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Which made it work.
yeah, so I mean that's pretty much, the techniques are all the same. Don't be afraid to get too much on the wall. You're not going to screw it up. You can clean it up. It's really, everybody overthinks sheetrock. But again, edges are the most important when you're applying, so keep your pressure on the edges nice and tight, and then soften that up in the centers so you don't pull the tape, and then for Dave, again, when you first put the patch on, it's very light. Get it to apply smooth. If it's not smooth and you can already see the tape, pull that off, start over. Like really start over, because it could be that the tape bent, the little metal piece bent. So there's a lot of different things that could be wrong, and that's why you have to get that right. If you get that wrong, then everything else, consecutive that follows is just, you're trying to backpedal and fix. You shouldn't. It should be a real quick fix. It should be just done. So, you know what? I will try to show you. I'm sure that eventually we're going to get knockdown. Where we're going to have to do knockdown texture. So knockdown. Let's see if I can just get the. That's good enough. Okay, so knockdown, you're going to do the same thing. Except afterwards, you're going to super lightly knock it down to get that texture. So that's how you get knocked down. This is just really crappy, but and actually I would use, where's this 6? Here. Okay. So let's try to find texture about everything. I'll use this space right up here and then try to get it. Okay, So then I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna super lightly just knock it down. Just like that. And so that's how you make knockdown texture. It works a lot better if you can get either a good can of this, or I have a actual knockdown hand, it's a hand pump over there, and you're gonna mix mud to a thicker consistency than this so that you get a consistent knockdown. Because a lot of this is just gonna it's just gonna shrink to nothing. That's why I don't like using this for knockdown, but you can use it for knockdown. So, but that's how you do a knockdown technique. So if we get to that, I'll probably show you guys in the field, because it is a little different than when it's just on bare wall. And you can't even really see it. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have to do other techniques. And we'll just, we'll adjust when we get those houses with those textures. So that's it. Any other questions? Well, thanks for coming out. All right.